and have done a lot of work on the Store It Safe program. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you are not familiar with the Store It Safe program, please feel free to go back and check our intro module out just so you have the background. But today on this module, we're going to be talking about Store It Safe as it relates to young children and how we can talk to families of young children about safe gun storage, as well as the data around young children and firearm safety. I have no disclosures. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about the Store It Safe program. I covered it more in the intro module. So if you want something more in depth, please check that out. And then what can we do as providers to keep kids safe from unintentional firearm injuries? So we know that kids live in environments where there are firearms. And if they don't live in an environment, they're visiting an environment where there are firearms. We know kids as young as 3, and actually some studies actually indicate 2 years of age have the ability to fire guns. And we know that little kids are curious and big children are impulsive. Actually, when I was a resident and I was learning from my mentor who was huge in injury prevention, Dr. Beth Ebel, she one time in clinics asked me, "Did you ever find the Christmas presents?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She said, "When you were little, did you ever search the house when your parents weren't home and find the Christmas presents?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, my sister and I did every single year." She said, "It's the same thing with a gun. Parents think they're so clever and they hide the gun in such safe places, but kids are always more clever and very curious, so they will find the gun, which is why it's so important that we're storing guns safely." I've reviewed this data previously, but we know that at least half of all homes have a firearm, which accounts for greater than 200 million guns in the United States, the majority of which are handguns. In the state of Ohio specifically, at least 37% of households have a firearm. 37% of people who responded to the behavioral risk factor surveillance system said there was a firearm, and 46% reported that their gun was in an unlocked location. So getting more specific to young children around firearms, when we look at firearm homicide data in young children, we know that in young children, it's more likely to be related to an intimate partner violence related situation, or that the child is a bystander, or that there's some sort of family conflict going on. When we look at accidental shootings, however, in young children, we know that often the shooter is also a young child. So maybe 2 young children who are not being supervised and someone finds a gun. It most commonly involves playing with the gun and most often occurs within the home, or a home, I should say. So in an article published in the Archives of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine, surveys were distributed in a primary care setting to parents and children with the intention of trying to determine the accuracy of parental predictions around their child's knowledge and self-reported behavior around guns. And the results were really fascinating. What the authors of the study found was that children as young as 10 years old were just as likely as older children to know where guns were stored in the house and have handled the gun themselves. So this is a picture of a hiding place in a desk or a table. What the survey also showed us was almost 40% of parents incorrectly thought that the child didn't know the location of the gun. So, the parent thought they'd hidden it really well, but the child did in fact know where the gun was. 22% of the parents inaccurately thought that their child had never handled a gun. And we do know that although we teach kids don't handle a gun, studies do show that if they see a gun, they're curious. And so teaching kids is not enough. We need to have barriers in place so that no matter how curious they are not able to gain access to the guns. We know from other studies that parents want to know what age firearm safety should be discussed, how to discuss it, and how to talk about firearm safety with the parents of your children's friends. So when we talk about age, I'm going to back up here just a minute. When we talk about age, I would say that it's never too soon to start talking about this. We'll talk in a minute about how to have that discussion. And when we're talking about how to discuss firearm safety with the child's friends, parents. I think that just as you are, reviewing food allergies, you can kind of roll it into, hey, when my child's going over to someone else's house, just want to cover a couple things. He does or doesn't have any food allergies, is or isn't afraid of animals, or isn't allergic to animals. Is there a gun, or if there's a gun in the home, is it kept safely or stored locked up? So that would be a way to just kind of roll it in and make it a little bit less awkward. The other thing is once you've done it a few times, it becomes much easier to do from a parent standpoint. Same with, having the discussion in the exam room. The more often you do it, the more comfortable you get. I would venture to guess that we're all pretty comfortable with child passenger safety, so we talk about it a lot, but we might not all talk about firearm safety as much. So this is the opportunity to really think about how you want to do it, make it more natural in the exam room setting, and start making it part of your practice so you do become more comfortable. And families can always pick up, I think, when you're comfortable talking about something, as opposed to when you're feeling uncomfortable. So just to make sure you're still with us and that you're paying attention, a quick quiz question. Accidental shootings in children most often occur where? At school, at home, at daycare, on the sidewalk, or at the park? So if you said in a home, you are correct. Among parents surveyed about guns, what percentage incorrectly thought that their child never handled a gun? 5%, 12%, 22%, 52%, or 72%? So yes, it's 22% incorrectly thought that their child had never handled a gun. That's almost a quarter of the parents surveyed, which is pretty significant. All right, so we've talked about the partnership for safety of children around firearms in the intro module. But just a brief summary is this is a partnership of organizations who all have some involvement in the gun issue, whether they are law enforcement or concealed carry instructors or gun retailers, Buckeye Firearms, pediatricians, and we came together to agree on some messaging. And in phase one, we agreed on store it safe. It was very simple. If you have a gun, store it safely. And so what we decided is, phase one, we'd really focus on the young children, which is what we're talking about here in this module. So in phase one, we decided that we were going to focus on young children. And it was really obvious from the beginning of our discussion that the message that we all could agree on was store it safe. It's that simple. If you have a gun, you need to lock it up. One of the partners from one of our gun retailer shops was saying, if the gun's not on my body, it's locked up. And that was really helpful, I think, for all of us to kind of visualize that if the gun is not in the physical control of a knowledgeable adult, then it needs to be locked up. So we decided that because this is a hard discussion to have, that we were going to develop a discussion guide for physicians with some specific talking points. We developed a family handout, and this was all with input from all of our partners. And both of those resources are on our website for you to use as often as you need. We wrote an article on our partnership. It's a pretty unique partnership to have people from Buckeye Firearms and law enforcement and all these people coming together to talk about the gun issue, which can be pretty divisive, as you all know. So we wrote an article on that. We did a big social media push. Columbus Dispatch actually asked to meet with their editorial board asked to meet with the partnership. So we went down and had a meeting about what we were trying to do, and they wrote an article on the partnership. And then we did the gun box pilot, which I go into more detail in the intro module. And then we presented the AAP National Conference, the preliminary results of our partnership and of our pilot study. So these are just some examples of the handouts. I realize you can't read them, but I just want you to know what they look like and that they are available to you. So what can you do? First of all, I'm going to just go back there. You can take the pledge. So we want providers, educators, parents to take the pledge saying, yes, I want to try and reverse the trend of irreversible actions, and I commit to doing that. Use our Store It Safe resources, whether it's for young children, for families, for providers, and then also watch our teen module. that is also available for you. Kind of the issues are a little bit different with teens. And then participating in store it safe social media activities. So these are some examples of the handouts that we developed, and I realize you can't read them. The print is too small to read in the slide format, but I just want to make you aware that these ones are specific for the younger children. There's one for families, so you can hand these out at well child visits, and then there's one for providers. So, if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, how do I have this conversation? There's a really nice guide. And it's not a complicated topic. Really, all you need to say is the gun needs to be kept locked up. Okay, so when you're having this conversation, if you're uncomfortable, just think of it as talking about any other safety thing. We talk about car seats, we talk about water safety. We ask if people have a pool and we don't feel uncomfortable about that. It's the same thing. And if we make it part of our normal safety conversation, then it's not awkward. It doesn't seem accusatory. Do you have a gun in the home? It's just part of what you talk about. Our medications being stored locked up, our cleaning products kept out of the reach of children. Do you have smoke detectors? Do you have your gun locked up? It's just part of the conversation. So it makes it just flow a little easier. And then operate under the assumption that everyone has a firearm, and frame your discussion in that way. So we operate under the assumption that most people have a car, and so we ask about car seats, and we talk to them about car seats. The other thing is, instead of saying, do you have a gun? Again, just assume they do. If there's a gun in the home, is it kept locked up? And I'm really careful about how I ask this question, because I've realized over the years of talking about guns that if I just say, is the gun safe? That doesn't necessarily mean it's locked up. So safe to me means it's locked up, but safe to someone else may mean it's hidden under the mattress in the bedroom. So being very specific about what you mean when you're having that conversation. And if they have it locked up, then fantastic, that's great. You can talk about, that's fantastic. You want to make sure it's locked every time. Or, what about other homes where your child goes to visit or play? If they say no, then there's a great opportunity for some education. And if you have a gun box available to you, you can provide it at that time. And if they have no gun, great, the child is safe in that home. But again, it's still important to have that conversation about gun safety, because the child is very likely going into a home where there is a gun when they go to play somewhere or go over to a babysitter's house or something like that. So I liken this very similar to having an asthma conversation. Instead of, do you miss a controller, which is a little bit accusatory, maybe seems a little judgmental, I say, how many times in a week do you think you miss your controller medication? It kind of provides permission that people miss their medication. It's okay. How often do you think that happens? So if there's a gun in the home, acknowledges that you realize that people have guns in their home. Is it kept locked up? Again, some people might be sensitive about if you're charting while you're talking about guns, if you're typing in the EMR, if they're sensitive to whether or not it's being documented. So you may just want to, look up, have a conversation that way, so they don't feel like you are keeping a record of whether or not they own a gun. So what can you do? Well, just talk about safe gun storage is the first thing. Use our materials. We have them for the young children. We have them for the teens. Take our pledge, which you can go to our website, and it just says that you want to be part of what we're doing, talking to families, being part of this movement. We have social media posts that you can use that are easy. You can just copy and paste them, so you don't have to come up with something on your own. We are going to be taking applications for gun boxes. So when you take the pledge, you'll go on our mailing list, and then you'll be able to learn more about availability of gun boxes if that's something that you're interested in. And then also join us for our teen module as well, to learn a little bit more about the conversations with teens and their parents and other ways that you as providers can be taking good care of the mental health of our teen patients. So this is a billboard that our Akron Children's Partners are using to promote Store It Safe, and they're showing not just guns, but other lethal means such as medications being kept locked up. So I'm happy to ever answer any questions you may have. You may reach out, and we appreciate your time and your interest in firearm safety. Thank you so much.